Shalom everyone from Yerushalayim. As all of you know, we are going through once again difficult times, and as we approach the Yom Tov of Pesach, all of us pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring us Shalom and the Geula Shlema, as Chazal say. B'Nisan Nigalu, we were redeemed in the month of Nisan. U'B'Nisan Hasidin Ligael, and the future redemption will be coming in Nisan as well. And may all of us be zocher to see this Geula b'mheira v'yameinu. I wanted to share with you a thought about the 4 cups of wine. All of us know that one of the great mitzvos of Seder night is we have to drink 4 cups of wine, because the Torah uses 4 terms of redemption. V'otzeisi, I will take you out. V'tzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachli eschem li liyam, I will take you unto me for a nation, which is actually referring to Matan Torah, which is the ultimate climax of the redemption. And I have spoken about this before, but I'm going to say something that I have not said before, and that is I want to project backwards a little bit and look at the calendar before Pesach. In the month of Adar, we have 4 special parshios, 4 special Torah readings in the month of Adar. Parashat Shekalim, about the half shekel. Parashat Zachor, about remembering Amalek. Parashat Parah, about the mystery of the red heifer. And last Shabbos, the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we read about Parashat HaChodesh. Now, although we've already passed that, I actually want to connect it with the 4 cups of wine. Rav Tzadok of Lublin, the great Rav Tzadok, writes that as we approach Pesach and we try to achieve freedom and connection with God, because that's the ultimate meaning of freedom, we first have to eradicate the very bad and destructive midos that prevent us from developing that connection. Now, we know that the 3 positive things that create our connection to God are, of course, the 3 pillars that the world stands upon, and that is Torah, Avoda, Gemilas Chasadim, the learning of Torah, divine service of korbanos and prayer, and Gemilas Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. But the same way, there are 3 positive features that build our relationship. There are 3 negative features that destroy that relationship. And these are encapsulated by Rabbi Elazar HaKapor, who says Hakina, jealousy, Taiva, excessive preoccupation with hedonistic pleasure, and Kavod, the incessant seeking of ego gratification. Motzian es ha'adam min ha'olam, they destroy a person's ability to connect to God. So Rav Tzadok suggests that before we come to the holiday of Pesach, we need to work on and eradicate, although we'll never be 100% successful, the negative attributes of jealousy, taiva, lust, and kavod. And he suggests, therefore, that this is the purpose of the 4 parshios. Parashat Shekalim helps us deal with jealousy. Parashat Zachor helps us deal with taiva. I will explain this. Parashat Parah helps us deal with kavod. And as we have worked on kina, taiva, v'kavod, we're then ready for the 4th level, which is chodesh, which means hischadshut, renewal and connection to God. And as a result, this will exactly parallel the 4 cups of wine, that we are succeeding in getting liberated in stages. We try to liberate ourselves from jealousy. We try to liberate ourselves from tava. We try to liberate ourselves from kavod. And then we're ready for the 4th cup, in which we can truly accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. Because as long as we have these bad and destructive midos inside of us, we are not ready to accept the Torah. Rav Chaim Vital says that good midos are a foundation to the edifice that you construct. They are kind of beyond the Torah, even prior to the Torah, because the Torah can only be given to people who are fundamentally good in their midos tovos. So now let me just explain relatively quickly how each of the 4 parshiot corresponds to the eradication of this destructive midah. Parashat Shekalim. We know that the distinguishing feature of the Parashat Shekalim is that rich and poor give the same amount. That even if you are very, very wealthy, you cannot give more than a half shekel. And even if you're very, very poor, you cannot give less than a half shekel. Everyone is equal. The Sfas Emes writes that the lesson of Machzas HaShekel is that when we talk about having a relationship to God, Whether you're wealthy or poor makes no difference, and that doesn't only mean in money. Some people are wealthy in all sorts of talents, wisdom, charisma, leadership ability. Other people might be a little defective in some of those talents. But the point is, as long as you do the best with the kochot that Hashem has given you, you stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with equality. The rich, however that's defined, and the poor, however that is defined, stand with equality of dignity and importance and belovedness in the eyes of God, as long as you do your best. If you think about this, this is obviously a very great antidote to jealousy. Because I look around and I see somebody who's smarter than me, who's richer than me, who has seemingly more success in life. And I look at myself and I feel cheated and I feel deprived and I feel I wasn't given the chances that I need. But the lesson of Machzas HaShekel is, you serve God with what you have. You are as beloved to God as the person who serves God with what they have. And lehepech, if you give God 100% of what you have, that is actually greater than the person who might do much, much more than you, but is only giving God 20% or 30%. So the machshava of Machzas HaShekel helps us uproot the very destructive midah of jealousy. Now, we then come to Parashat Zachor, and here the association is a little less clear. But Rav Tzadok writes, and other Svarim write it as well, that when we talk about eradicating Amalek, Amalek represents this evil in the world, but it's not only the external Amalek, but there's an internal Amalek that's within us. And part of the obligation of eradicating Amalek is to eradicate the Amalek that is within us, because in a sense, it is the Amalek within us that gives power to the external Amalek to persecute us and to destroy us. So what is the Amalek within? Rav Tzadok suggests it is coldness in the service of God. You know, the Torah talks about Amalek as Asher Korcha Baderech. They encountered you in the way, but Rashi brings a medrash that Korcha means they made you cold. Now, the way Rashi explains it, again, the way the medrash explains it, is when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, the whole world was afraid of them. They were like a boiling, scalding bath that nobody would dare put in their toe or put in their finger. They were scared of the Jews. The splitting of the Red Sea, the 10 plagues. Amalek jumped into that boiling bath, and they got burnt. But they cooled off the bath for the next guy. That's how Rashi, based on the Medrash, understands made you cold. Rav Tzadok takes the same etymology, but he moves it in a different direction. He says, the shoresh, the root of Amalek, is coldness and complacency in our service of God. You know, even if a person keeps the mitzvahs, and even if a person learns Torah, and that's a wonderful thing, but if you do it without feeling, you do it without passion, you do it out of a sense of boredom or complacency or disinterest, there is something defective in that avodah, and that's kind of the Amalek of indifference and coldness. And therefore, when we talk about eradicating Amalek, we are talking about eradicating the coldness of the soul that does not respond to spirituality with joy and vibrancy. Rav Tzadok then goes on and says, why would it be that mitzvahs sometimes don't excite us? Why don't we get an excited passion about every Shabbos, every davening, every benching, every bracha? Why is it that we turn off and tune out even if we're going through the motions? So Rav Tzadok suggests that this is when you're over-involved in the hedonistic pleasures of the world. Now, Judaism is not ascetic. We do believe that a person should legitimately enjoy the world and thank God for it. But it's also true that the more we are connected to the physical and the material, the more that becomes the central part of our lives, the less attuned and sensitive we will be to spiritual pleasure. And that is because physical pleasures tend to be immediate, and spiritual pleasures take effort and work. And once we get habituated to the immediate rush, we're not willing or happy to put in the effort. So based on these train of associations, let me reiterate Parashat Zachor is eradicating Amalek. But eradicating Amalek on the outside also means eradicating Amalek on the inside. And Amalek on the inside is coldness in Avodas Hashem. And the coldness comes from the taiva, the over-involvement in materialistic and hedonistic pleasure. So Parashat Zachor makes us reflect on the fact that we need to disengage a little bit from the rat race of accumulation and taiva and possessions. It's okay to own possessions, but you got to be careful that your possessions don't own you, because there you're in trouble. So Shekalim helps us with jealousy. Zachor, in an indirect way, helps us reflect on taiva. And then we come to Parah Aduma, the mystery of the red heifer, in which if a person was tameh by being in contact with a dead body, so the purification ritual is to be sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer. And this is called a chok. This is a law for which we really don't understand all the reasons. Even Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest of all people, who understood, or thought he understood, all of the mitzvahs of the Torah, when he got to this one, he realized that this was an enigma. Nevertheless, the Sifrei Chasidus give us a little bit of an explanation, and they basically tell us that death, Adam and Chava should have lived forever. Death came into the world because of arrogance and gaiva, because the Nachash told them, the day that you eat this fruit, you will be like God, understanding good and evil. In other words, the fruit was marketed as a God pill. Imagine the ultimate ego trip of being God. Now, in many ways, a human being is godlike. We are made in the image of God. We have free will, we have autonomy, we have intelligence, we have creativity. We can destroy worlds, we can create many, many things. And yet, when a human being is carried away, and to think he can replace God or be as good as God, that will ultimately be his destruction. Death came into the world because of arrogance and gaiva. And the reason why we are purified with ashes is because ashes is a sign of humility. Death comes into the world because of arrogance. We become liberated from death by gestures of humility and submission. Now, what's interesting is humility is both good and bad. There is good humility and bad humility. The good humility is the humility in which I understand that everything I am is from Hashem, and I must use my talents to serve Hashem. There is bad humility in which I think I'm worthless and what I do doesn't count. And that might even be part of the mystery why with Parah Aduma we have the paradox that the ashes can purify the impure, but those who handle the ashes become impure, because how can the same thing make you pure and impure? Humility is exactly that situation. The humility of turning my life over to God is wonderful and pure, but the humility of self-loathing, a lack of self-esteem, a sense of worthlessness, turns out to be destructive and impure, because you'll never become the person that God intended you to be. As Rav Yerucham of Mir said, a person who is not aware of his faults is a foolish person, if I think I'm perfect. But a person who is not aware of their inner greatness is a tragic person, because he will never know the tools that God gave him to accomplish his mission. So far we have the very beautiful progression. Shekalim helps us with jealousy. Zachor helps us with taiva. The paradox of Parah Aduma helps us balance the need for humility and the need of healthy self-esteem. Hopefully, we go through a transition where we try to improve ourselves in the areas of kinah, taiva, v'kavod. Afterwards, you are ready for renewal. Now, halachically, it's very interesting that in the Jewish calendar, there can sometimes be a break between Shekalim Zachor and Zachor Parah, but there is never a break between Parah and Chodesh. Parashat Chodesh is always the Shabbos right after Parashat Parah, and the reason Rav Tzadok says is the following idea. After you eradicate the evil, and you've achieved a certain level of inspiration, you must concretize it in virtuous action. You know, all of us have moments of inspiration. It might be after Yom Kippur, it might be at a wedding of our child or grandchild, it might be at the Kotel, it might be just walking in Yerushalayim. There are moments in which we are inspired, but if you don't concretize it, I'm going to, even in a small way, I'm going to pray to Hashem, give thanks to Hashem in my own words for 15 minutes. I'm going to learn an extra half an hour. The inspiration dissipates, disappears, and it's not going to be recaptured. So after you've achieved a successful battle against Kinah Taiva V'Kavod, you then have to have renewal. So now let's swing over to the 4 cups of wine. If the 4 cups of wine are an expression of freedom, perhaps homiletically, now this is a drush, I'm not claiming this is pshat, the first 3 cups, we're achieving symbolically freedom from Kinah Taiva V'Kavod, just like Shekalim, Zachor, and Parah. And the last cup is Matan Torah, V'lakachti etchem li li'am, because that's exactly the message. Only when you have purified your midos are you truly ready to accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah and live the life of a Jew. As Rav Chaim Vital says, without midos tovos, we are not yet human beings. The Torah was given to human beings, not to animals. And when we live on the level of animals, we are not ready to be sanctified and elevated by Hashem's Torah. So as we think of the 4 parshiot, and we try to connect them to the 4 cups of wine, let us recognize that Pesach is not only about the historical redemption of the Jewish people from their slavery in Egypt. It is about the redemption of each and every one of us from the inner enslavements that we have, the chains that hold us back, the midos ros that block us. As the Balatanya says, the very word Mitzrayim means mitzarim, boundaries, constrictions, and blockages. May all of us be zocheh to become liberated from all that enslaves us in our personal life. Chag kasher v'sameach.
Hi, this is Peretz Baruch Eichler, a proud alumnus of Ohr Somayach. Now, what you just watched is one of the many programs that Ohr Somayach provides, leaving its impact on hundreds of thousands with so many more waiting to be reached. Ohr Somayach's central campus in Jerusalem has over 300 students presently learning there. And now you can be a vital part of spreading that bounty of knowledge worldwide by logging on to donate.ohr.edu. We can step up to the plate at this pivotal moment of Ohr Somayach's growth and bring the next generation of Jews home.